I don't know if anybody's here just yet because we're just starting, but as you come on board, say hello, a little hi, a little good to be here, whatever. And actually look for hoping to get some comments as we go, even if it's a bad comment. Any comment's better than none. I really look forward to that. So as you come on board, let me know you're here. A hi, a hello, glad to be here, however you might want to do that. We always wait just 2 or 3 minutes before we get started. So that's what I'm doing just now. Reposition myself here a little bit. So, looking forward to today. It's the, second chapter of my book, Building a Purposeful Business. But we're gonna wait just a few minutes to get started. And, the topic is, if anyone's here already, is, valuing people. The the need and the essence of valuing others. As it as more valuable than yourself, or at least as valuable as yourself. As anyone comes on board, I'll say hello. I hope you saw the post. And in that post, I also put a video that I did some time ago that I keep hoping more people will view. It's by Saint Augustine. I read from one of his confessions, and I think it's really valuable. So that's why I put it in the post. So you can click on that and listen to that. Uh, it will interact with what we're talking about today. So uh, I hope you'll click on that and get the opportunity to hear that. Uh, so few people have seen it, and to me, it's such a valuable little 3 or 4 minute thing. So Saint Augustine on remove the spear and heal the wound, two different processes. So we're at about 2.5 minutes. So in just another half minute, I'm going to get started and discussing the value of people as you are thinking about doing your own business, as you are already part of a business, as you are already just in the workplace. Doesn't matter. Wherever you are, this is a valuable reality that we need to be in touch with. Okay. All right. So we're at the 3 minute point. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I do see a couple of people on, and I see Woody Smith. Hello, Woody. Thanks for saying hello. This is Real 67. I like that. Kind of sounds like the authentic old guy. So glad to have you. And there's a few other people here. So just say hello for a moment before we get started. Okay. That was Woody Smith, 2500, acknowledging 67 is here. Okay, good. All right. Well, we are going to get started on valuing people from chapter 2 of my book, Building a Purposeful Business. And I will say before we get started, an Emoto Dream is on. Uh, Werewolf is on. Is that Werewolf? Or, no, it's just for kicks and a few others. Um, It's from chapter 2 in my book, and I call it one of the foundational principles. If you recall, last week was a foundational principle, the idea that everything has changed when we are in a new business, starting our own in particular. But anytime in a small business as compared to being in the corporate world, we looked at all of the ideas of how everything has changed. And so today we're looking at a second foundational principle, and these are the only two I note as foundational. There are probably others, I'm sure, but for me, these were the two that connect. And one might ask, well, how is valuing people such a big deal that it would become one of the quote foundational principles of doing your own business? And that's what I hope to explain to you today, because I think it's very, very important. And I want to differentiate between valuing people slash supporting people. I think that kind of is the same, and helping people. there's a little bit of a difference. So before we get done, we'll discuss that. And let's see, I see Stella here and SideQuest and someone from England. Is it SideQuest? Great. So the value of people and why that's so important, and why I noted it as the second basic foundational uh, concept, and what it all means. And as I thought it through, this happens to be one of the ones that I didn't make a mistake about. It came quite natural for me to value people, to be interacting with people on the basis that we are the same, and that we just bring different resources to the table. But as a human being, you and I are the same. And I'm not above you because I own the business. You're not above me because you make more money. The idea that we are the same, or human beings. And so, as I thought about that, and as I recognized that for me, came somewhat natural. And so, but don't necessarily think it does for everyone. For me, I, uh, I realized that it came natural because I had just come to a place in my life where my eyes had been open, and my heart had been open to the reality of coming to know the living and resurrected Christ. And so, and I've shared that with you before. It was a big deal for me, and I was maybe 20 years old, and that reality changed everything. And like I shared last week, and everything changes with regard to the business. I use that example of one coming to Christ, and everything changes for them. And so I was in that place in my life, and I realized that my valuing other people came as a result of the fact that I had just then realized that I had been valued by the living God. And so that was a revelation, and it was exciting to recognize that, to embrace that, to understand that, to know that, and to believe that. That being the case, it was embedded into my heart, into my being, that because of who he is and because of what he's done for this little peon, that it would be quite natural. And it just became a natural part of me for that to flow out to others. Uh, because if he, God, has done that to this little speck in the universe, then certainly I don't want to look at someone else than a lesser speck than myself. So that's kind of what I thought through as I realized that that was what came somewhat naturally for me. And so, in light of that, I thought I would share first, before we get to the chapter on valuing people, my testimony about that. I've never done that here on this channel. I've shared my later life testimony, that testimony whereby I, as a prodigal, kind of left the faith, so to speak, for several years and went into what I called that black hole period. And so, there's videos on all of that, but I've never shared this beginning point. I've never shared this place of recognizing that very first place where God opened my eyes and removed the spear. I told you that's why I put that video on the post here. So please take a look at that when you can, because Augustine so wonderfully, in just a couple pages, I think it takes me 3 minutes to read it, it describes this idea of coming to know God. It's when he removes the spear, we recognize that we have a spear in us. We recognize that we have a need, that we're desperately and wounded, and we need help. And so when we're at that place and we recognize that, then God removes the spear by virtue of what Christ has done. And but then the process of healing the wound begins, and it's a lifelong process. And so, again, that's why I placed that little video on there. I really hope you'll view it. It only has 18 views, so I'm hoping it gets twice that many after today. is it's really powerful. One comment on it was, "That's really powerful," and so it is. So take a look at that. But I think that that's why, for me, that this matter of valuing others became such a thing for me. It just began to flow out of me because of what he had done for me. So I want to tell you that story today. Um, and I was maybe 20 years old, and I was in North Carolina, and had uh, gone down there uh, to start a community college there, and was looking for work, and I had a particular job doing mechanical drawing, and thinking that that might be what I want to do. But always really wanting to do a business. That was always on my heart. I wanted to understand how I might be able to do a business. My father, always wanted me to come into his grocery business. I didn't want to do that. So I was always looking for something. And in the process of that happening, I stumbled across, of course, I don't believe there are any coincidences. That a stumble is not a stumble, it's the hand of God, maybe putting his finger in the way, and you stumble over that. I came into contact with a fellow named Frank, and Frank took me in like a son. He became a father, really a dad to me for a couple of years, teaching me all about the business, embracing me wholeheartedly. I would eat at his home most of the week. And so he and his wife had kind of taken me in. His children had already grown and moved out of the home, and that was really special to me because my father was a father. That is to say, he was a father, not so much a dad. Uh, I guess I loved him. I'm sure he somehow loved me, and he showed it in certain ways. But there was not that relationship of being a dad. And so before I go on and share, that's what I became. I became a father to my son, my three daughters, not a dad. And so, even though I had come to Christ, even though my eyes had been open, I still had the next number of years raising that family as a as a father, as my father, a father and not a dad. I did the best I could, and I'm sure I did some things right. But all in all, I don't see that I was a dad during those years. I see that I was a father like my father. So when Frank embraced me and took me into his home and he taught me everything about the business, I of course loved he and his family as a result of that. And so here's what happened. We're growing the business, and let me explain to you. I've told you before it's a cleaning business, and I've never given you details on that. And it was a drapery cleaning business. If any of you know what draperies are these days, back then they were a big deal. They were at every window, curtains, draperies, and so we cleaned those and manufactured those. And today, of course, they're like dinosaurs. You only see a few. You see them behind the president when he speaks because they're in the White House. You can't see them in the offices of Capitol Hill because they're there. And we used to clean those, by the way, because I'm here in the Baltimore D.C. area, and so that was part of what we did. Uh, and and so they became a dinosaur, and eventually, just so you understand, when the fellow I told you about last week, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it today, Jim took the business on further. He understood that we needed to find, as this transitioning was happening over a 15 or 20 years period, where hard products at windows were becoming a thing as opposed to draperies, that we needed to transition. And so he transitioned us into hospitals, and we serviced privacy curtains and cubicle curtains around the beds. So that's what we did. And so here's the story. I was out going to all different cities, and what you would do is you just go into a city, however small it was, and you look around and you say, Where are there some draperies in commercial buildings? This is all for commercial." And if I saw a building that had some, I would say, well, I'm going to go over there and find a building manager or maintenance person or the owner or office manager and find out who it is I need to talk to, to let them know that I could clean those for them and that we could get that get that fixed for them because you don't want to be smelling all that dust in all the time. And it was a need because not many people did that. It's kind of still a niche even today. So that's what I would do. Go from city to city, and so when I realized that we were transporting these all the way back to Charlotte, North Carolina, from maybe a couple of hours away, I said to Frank, I said, I'd like to, have a small plant up in Burlington, North Carolina, and that's that little tri-city area of Chapel Hill and Raleigh, Durham, and Greensboro. It's right in the center of all that, and I said, if we had a plant there, we wouldn't have to travel so much. And it can be a small plant. And he said, sure. I said, well, I'll need somebody to take with me. And so that he could, do do the work. I was kind of doing the sales, and he would do the work. And and I said, I notice every time I come here to the plant, early morning or late at night, there's this fella Jerry over there. I don't know much about Jerry, but I'd like to take him with me. And Frank said, fine. He said, you need to know that Jerry was sent to me by a friend of mine in the church that said he couldn't get a job, no one would hire him. And it was because he went into the military to get away from drugs, thinking that he knew he had a problem, and he thought if he goes into the military, the discipline of that and the seclusion of that that environment would help him to get over his drug addiction. He said, "Well, what happened is it was just as easy to get drugs in the military as it was out." And so Jerry got a dishonorable discharge out of the military. He said, "But in the meantime, God has used all of this to draw him to Himself and make him a new person." I didn't know what Frank was talking about with regard to all of that. I said, "Well, great. Sound all I know is he's a hard worker, and I'd like to take him with me." And so Frank said that'd be fine. So we go to Burlington, North Carolina, and we find a small apartment. And so Jerry uses one room and I use the other. And what he would do at night is he would quote preach to me through the walls. It wasn't really preaching. He was just sharing his story and just sharing what he knew of Jesus. He had just come to Christ in the last couple of years, and so he was very excited about all this. He'd been freed from drugs and from the bondage of drugs, and so he was very excited about all of that. And so, that went on for a period of time, and then Jerry started going out into churches, and he would share his story. People are interested when there's a life-changing story that they can hear, and so you go to churches on the weekend and you share your story. And so there was going to be one near Burlington, and so Frank said to me, Jerry's going to be talking over here at this church. Why don't you go with me? And, it's Frank. He's like my father. He's like my dad, right? Sure, you know. And so I go, and and Jerry, gives his testimony and shares how Christ changed his life, and I'm listening and kind of thinking like this. Well, wow, Jerry really needed that. Man, he was really stuck on drugs, and his life was a mess, and so he really needed that help. Oh, I'm so glad he got it. But at the same time, I felt something going on inside of me. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I do know that my hands were glued to the pew in front of me. That I couldn't let go of it because I knew. I think I knew that if I let go of it, my feet might move. To go down to the altar there. And so something was going on. I didn't know what was going on, and I just knew something was going on inside of me. And so again. Know nothing about Christ. No, all of this is new to me, and so we go on, and Jerry continues to quote preach through the walls to me. My door's closed, his is open, so I don't hear everything. And so as I traveled, and as I was on a beach, maybe Myrtle Beach, I don't know, one of the beaches in North or South Carolina, I can't really remember. My journey kind of started this way. I said, God, if you're there, make yourself known to me. It was a simple prayer, but it was a heartfelt prayer because I didn't know what was going on. I knew that I had some needs. I knew that my life wasn't all that I wanted it to be, and all I was kind of going about was building the business and making it work for Frank and myself. And I just had a sense though that I needed more. I didn't quite know what all it was about, so that was my prayer. It wasn't anything any more fancy than that, and not a spoken word that I hear, but I did get this idea. I said, well, and it felt like it came from God, that if you want to know more about me, if you want to know more about my people, if you want to know if I'm here, you ought to be around where my people are. And so, of course, that equated to a church. So whatever city I was in, for the coming months, I would just go into a church and I would know what it was. Was it Methodist? Was it Baptist? Was it Zionist? I don't know. It didn't matter. I didn't understand any of that. Was it teaching the right thing or the wrong thing? I don't know. I didn't care. I went in, and every time I would go in, there would be a message for me. A message just for me. And so I would listen to that, and God was using all of that to draw me unto himself. No man comes unto the Son except that he be drawn by the Father. That has to happen. That's the beginning of the pursuit. Once we understand that, then we begin on a pursuit to know God better. But that doesn't begin until God first draws us unto himself. And that's what he was doing during those months. And so it was about that time that I decided to come back up here to the Baltimore area, and start my own business, and that's what I did. And when I did that, I said, "Well, I'll go back to that little church that I used to go to when I was 10 or 12 years old, and was actually baptized there. It didn't mean anything to me. I was baptized because everybody else was being baptized, or all the other kids were being. And when I got there, there was a new pastor, and Reverend Clow taught me the scriptures, and I began to come to know Christ in a very real way. And then, while the spear had started to be removed months earlier, it was now removed, and the wound needed to start being healed. And so that was a wonderful time in my life. It was at the very beginning of the business. So I say all of that to say, because I was in that mindset, because my heart had been changed, because my uh, basic personality had been uh, reflected, and much of it had been learned from Frank and what he did in taking in a guy that nobody else would hire, and seeing that and recognizing how important that was and how valuable that was to Jerry when he couldn't get anyone else to hire him, somehow settled into my heart as being the thing to do. You help others. It's somewhat on the order of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, but it's much deeper. You can do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and just be doing. That is, from your head, you can say, I ought to do that. But when we're doing it from the heart, because God has changed our heart, it's a little bit different. It's because He has made us new. And as a result of that, everything that now flows out of us is Him. And so our doing becomes because we are being, because we have become that new creature in Christ Jesus. All things have become new. The old things have passed away. And so it's not just doing, it's being, and as a result of being, we do. So so in that respect, if you want to consider that do unto others as you would have them do unto you, then it works. So that's how I assess that whole thing. This is years later when I'm writing the book and looking at it and saying, why is this so important to me? And determined that that was kind of the basis of it. So I, I saw that as really a really significant time in my life, and it did in fact impact me in such a way that it kind of formed me, and it formed me to have this value of other people in the way that God had come to value me. He already valued me in the way that I came to see and to understand and to embrace and to recognize and to believe that he had accepted me and that he had brought me into himself. So, when that happens, everything changes. Now, there are people that have a good heart, and got a very good friend for many many years that certainly has a good heart, and is good at helping people. Let's just, before we get to that chapter of valuing people, let's just think about the differentiation, in my mind at least, between valuing or supporting people versus helping people. When you help people, think about it. You're helping somebody. You're still a little bit above them. You're in your mindset. You're at a place better than them. You're at a place above them where they need help, and you're the helper. So really, at that point, it's still that it's still that you are God in your own mind and in your own heart. You're really operating as God. I love that phrase, and I think I've shared it with you before. That there are only two types of people in the world, and one is those who believe in God, and the other is those who believe they are God. Think about that. I mean, the bottom line of the bottom line really does kind of fall down that way, no matter what religion you are a part of, no matter what denomination within Christianity you are a part of, you can fall prey to that, that you haven't really let go of the will of your own, and that the will of God is really the most important thing to you. And so there's a time when we can even do that, where we even have come to change in our lives, that we haven't really reckoned with the idea that God is God, and only He is the only true God. And so those that kind of take that position of, I'm going to help somebody, that's a good thing. Nothing wrong with that. You ought to do that. But don't see that the same as valuing people. When we're valuing people, we're seeing them as important as we are, and so we want them to succeed in the same way that we would. We want them to become the person that we know that they can become because we have become a new person. And so it kind of goes beyond this matter of just helping them. No, you're challenging them to see themselves as they are, in the same way that God has seen fit to see, let me see myself as I am in His eyes. And so we want to do that with others. We want to do that with others. That's the value that we see in other people. They're just like me. They're just as needy as me. They have different talents and abilities, and they have different goals and direction that they're going, but they are a human being like me, and they have the same needs as I do. And so that's kind of at the core of this idea of valuing people, at the bottom of the bottom, so to speak, of what do I really believe, and what do I really want to do as another human being, with regard to another human being. And so that's what we want to talk about as we finally here. Sorry it's taken so long to get to the chapter that I call people. I just call it people. And as we think about that, and let me just take a break for a moment. I really hope that as we go along, that if you have any, if you like anything about what we share here in this next chapter, a like would be great. If you have any comments to make, again, whether negative or positive, I don't mind. A comment's great. And if you see any value for someone else that you might know, then share it with them later by sending the share button and sending the video somewhere else. And so, as I write, I'll just give a few examples of what this meant for me, in trying to get some other people over the hump, so that they were becoming the person that they could become. Uh, the first was a fellow named Dan, and Dan had been at the um, Helping Up Mission, is what it's called, in Baltimore. And the Helping Up Mission, helps men that are kind of on the street, or their lives have been destroyed for whatever reason, get back up on their feet, and feeds them and gives them a place to sleep and all that. And so Dan found himself in that place, and I'm maybe 30 years old at the time, and he's probably 50. But he had come through that, and his life had been changed. His eyes had been opened. And he came to know Christ, and he was set free from the problem of it was just drinking for him, just the alcohol. And so he got to the place in the mission there where they actually paid him a little bit to clean up around the place and to be a part of the staff, but just kind of as a janitor. But, as I spoke with Dan, I saw that he had he had some greater desires going on, and, he had a wife at home, and so he was trying to support that wife with this little bit of income. And so I kind of saw in Dan this desire and a responsibility that he was a very responsible person. And so I said, Dan, I bought this other residential drapery cleaning business, and along with it came this dry cleaning plant, and I really don't want it. And it's a little bit of a chain around the neck for me. Um, I think you could probably take that and make something of it. There's a house you can live up top. There's a plant down in the bottom, and a counter out front where people come in, and so I put together a little deal for him where he was able to buy that for, I don't know, it was maybe 25 or $35,000 at the time for everything. And could it have been sold for more? Of course, but it was win-win. It took that responsibility off of me so that the business did not have to stop, that the several employees that they had there could keep operating and keep having an income. And then it would set me free from all of that and keep that in place for them. So Dan did, he got a bank loan, and he took all that on, and it became a nice little operation for him, uh, right until the days that he retired some 20 or 30 years later. And so, to me, what we want to see in others is we want to see that spark that tells us that this person's responsible, that this person has other hopes and dreams, that this person wants to get above the hourly wage, that they want to grow, and that they want to become someone other than who they are at the time. And so, in whatever way that we can help them to do that, in my mind, is valuing people. It's seeing, and in the same way that God saw me and came and drew me into himself and made life new for me. Well, maybe I can do that in a small way for someone else. The other person was more recent. This was an example that's kind of entirely different because this person came from Thailand, and she's a young woman that is a great seamstress, and she was working in our organization at the time, and just as an hourly worker, but she couldn't quite stand that because when she was in her home country, she had her own business, and so all she needed was a little bit of help to know where to go to buy the right machines, and where to go to get the right equipment and the right materials. And so I kind of, worked with her a little bit on that, and kind of got her started. And I didn't do much more than that. It wasn't a matter of giving money or anything like that. It was just that that was the thing that she needed. To me, it was a very small thing. To her, it was a big deal. So we remain good friends even today as a result of that, because she appreciated it. So, again, seeing that need, seeing that place where someone is challenged and wants to do something better with their life, that they want to not be helped. Again, if I'm being helped, then I can't help but see the other person is better than me, is higher than me. And many people help people every day. They maybe just give them money, or they give them a job opportunity, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there is. I'm simply suggesting that helping someone is a little bit different than valuing that person. When you go into the restaurant and you have a meal, do you interact with that waitress? Do you care about what's going on in her life or his life to such a degree that you're not going to get a full-fledged conversation going on, but you can let them know that you care. You can let them know that you're interested. And whether it just be, how's your day going today, or how do you like this job, or do you have a dream that you've ever given up on? I love that question. That came from the Dream Giver book by Bruce Wilkinson, to get them to thinking about maybe something different in their lives. You see, it's not something you're going to have a conversation with them about right then and there. Do you have a dream that you've ever given up on? No, you're planting a seed that says, maybe there's something else going on in my life that I haven't thought about. Maybe I'm in this place where I don't really want to be. When Bruce Wilkinson gives that example, by the way, in his book, he says that the waitress actually says, well, yeah, I really wanted to be a nurse, but life began to happen. And I had children, and things changed, and here I am. And that's a story of a million people, millions of people. Things like that happen. But then she had the opportunity to take that little nugget, take that little thought, take that question, and begin to s- roll it around in her own mind and heart, and maybe begin to look at having a different uh, uh, future, having a different goal, setting something out for herself that she hadn't thought about setting out before someone asked her a simple question. That's valuing people. That's not just looking at the current needs and the certain circumstances of someone. That's looking at the person. That's trying to see the heart of the person and trying to connect with them in a very real way. Being connected with another human being is such a great need that we all have. And again, I've shared with you in other cases where I was so disconnected emotionally that that degree of valuing was not part of my life. I did care about people, and I did value people too, but I didn't get that far along. I couldn't connect with people on that level. And so all of that came as my emotional transformation, metamorphosis, the book. So, yeah, and of course, finally, I can't uh, ignore the really important and valuable friendship that developed through the business back in those years, when this young fella, Jim, came into the business. And again, I shared a little bit about that from the perspective of All Things Have Changed last week with regard to Jim and how he took the business on to greater heights. And, after I had a corporate bankruptcy. But I didn't tell you this part of it, and this part of it is when we started working together, he only lasted a few months, where he was anxious to get on with it himself and to do something on his own. And so, we needed someone to do something in another city, and we had him to do that. And could have been set up as some sort of a commission basis, some sort of um, you know, a greater pay basis or something of that sort. But with Jim, you could see that there was much more in him than that. That wouldn't really have worked for him. And he needed to kind of be out there on his own. So to a small degree, I kind of helped him get that. I supported him when nobody else would support him, and when the fellows that were responsible, that he was responsible to reporting to, didn't really like him and didn't really want to stand behind this transition for him to start out there on his own. So I kind of took that position for him. And we've remained good friends over all these years, maybe because of that, kind of in a similar way that Frank treated me and kind of brought me in as a dad to a son. In a little way, that kind of flowed over to this good friend of mine that we've now had 50 years together, or whatever it is, as a result of that. Um, Never saw him as any different than me. Never saw him as younger than me. He was, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years younger than me, but simply saw him as another human being that had greater desires, and a bigger desire than where he was at the time. So, so. when we're attuned to that, when we're attentive to that, when we're looking for that, when we are challenged to know what's going on in the person in another person's life like that, then we are aware, we are attentive, we are looking for that opportunity to be used in somebody else's life in a way that may bring them up a notch. And so it's always helpful to do that. It's always valuable to do that. It's always encouraging, not only to the other person, but to yourself, because you are experiencing something that you would not otherwise have experienced. So the matter of valuing people, no matter where you are, no matter where they are, not necessarily just related to your business, not just related to the work that you do, but everywhere that you go, trying to connect with people in a way that is real, taking the opportunity to just say a kind word to someone that you see maybe is being stressed that day and and maybe helping them get through that little bit of stress with just a kind word, with a humorous thought, with something that refreshes their day a little bit, is the idea of valuing people, seeing that people are going through the same things that you are. Life is no different for them than it is for you. As you have challenges, so they have challenges. And so that you want to be aware of that, and that you don't want to be in a helper mentality. You want to be on a level ground place with whoever it is. Now, I want to share this because I think it's so clear to me, and so I'll say it not knowing, what your stance is or what your thoughts are about another person or anything like that. None of that really matters. But I think if you will sincerely, honestly, watch President Trump and his dealings with people, and his goings and comings, and how he treats his staff, and how he treated all of his employees over the years, you'll see a man that understands valuing people. Whether it's a private in the military that he shakes his hand, he doesn't just shake his hand and move on. He looks him in the eyes and he speaks to him. If the man drops his hat, he picks the hat up for him and hands it back to him because he knows he can't not be out of attention while he's talking to the president. And so I just want you to recognize that, and whatever your thoughts are about a person, at least look at the honesty of that. If you'll just take a moment to recognize that and see that, and so look for that in other people. Look for that in those that say that they, excuse me, look for that in the people that you are interacting with day in and day out. It doesn't have to be somebody that you're deeply connected with. It can just be a passing human being, because we pass by as. As just the wind in this earth. And so let's be of value to one another as we go about doing that. And with that kind of mentality, the building that comes as a result of that, you say, well, why it's so important? Because we want to build a purposeful business. We want to build a business that doesn't just meet the financial needs of the people that are working there. Now, again, that's somewhat where I failed. I took this to such a degree that I helped people to such a degree. One of the older folks that we had working for us said, his problem is he's too nice to people, and so you don't take it that far. You got to make your business profitable, and you've got to be sure that you don't, work with people to support them in such a way that it's hurting the business. And so, that was a lesson I had to learn the hard way. But do see it as part of building a purposeful business, whether it's just going to be a one person operation for you because you do like this new product that I've been researching, this digital online product, or whether it be building a business on Main Street. where you may have more and more employees, but we're not talking about just employees. We're talking about how you value other people, how you see other people, what it means to you to be involved in the lives of other people, and how you see that as such an important part of everything that we do. So I'm hoping that you see that what we're addressing is really something from the heart. We're really addressing this matter of valuing people as kind of the essence of who we are as we are dealing with other people. That we don't see ourselves set apart, we don't see ourselves set above, we see ourselves on the same ground as any other human being that we come into contact with. Yeah, sometimes that may mean taking some dollar bills out of your wallet and actually giving them to the person that may need that kind of physical help. But more often than not, it's just going to mean an encouraging word, a kind word, a word that shows that you appreciate what you have been given by whoever. Maybe it was a mom or a dad, or maybe it was a quote Frank type person in your life, and so you can't help but let that flow into someone else because it becomes who you are because you see the value in that, and that you would never speak poorly of another person because what value is there in that? Maybe someone needs a reprimand, yes. Maybe someone needs to be spoken to strongly in order to stop a bad habit that they have or whatever. But all of that's different than how you see that person and how you embrace that person as another human being that is just as important in the scheme of things as you are. None of us are bigger than somebody else. None of us are better than anyone else. And if we're still God in our own eyes, thereby just helping people, uh, hopefully we take the time to begin to assess that in a way that says, wait a minute, what's going on here? I've never really thought about that. I've never really thought about whether or not somewhere in the depths of my being, I really see myself as God. Because again, we either believe we are God or we believe in God. And so if we have to say that, we haven't really come to that place of really believing in God in such an intimate way that we really see him as big as how big he is and how significant he is in our lives, and we're really still seeing ourselves as God. Okay, so I'm going to take a break and I'm just going to ask again for comments, for likes, for thoughts of any nature. I really hope to get a little bit of response here. I'm going to notice who we have here. There's a Hudson saying hello and said sad. I'm not sure what you're sad about. And then there's an undo. Uh, you married father. I'm not sure what that means. And my brother lives in North Carolina, Hudson says. Okay, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina during those years. Beautiful state. And don't know what part you're in there, Hudson, but that was kind of my territory for those younger years, way back when. Let me see who else is here. Lillian Vasquez. It's my grandparents' 50th anniversary today, and we're going to the church to celebrate. Hallelujah. Great. 50 years of an anniversary. That's wonderful. Hallelujah. Enjoy that today. Stella, you mean the meme? So I'm not sure what that came from. It was early on that she noted that. SideQuest said from England. I'm not sure what that was. Woody was on early, and so he's the one that said meme. What is this stream about? Hopefully somebody knows now. This is Real 67. Hopefully you're still here. Now you know. And let's see. Just for kicks. Since yesterday was Halloween, I yelled to my wife, "Oh my God, it's a werewolf." When she turned, I showed her my full moon. Oh boy. Okay, that's funny. Moto Dream said hello. Hello to you. And looks like I'm at the top of them there. Guys, I really appreciate it. Do any of you just have a final question, a final thought, a comment that you can give me. And again, I encourage you to take that remove the spear and heal the wound video that I placed in the post today. I really think you would appreciate that. Any thoughts before we close up? We're going to continue to look at the book in the coming weeks. And again, as I've been assessing that online product, the online digital business opportunity, I've seen that as great values. I've taken that on myself and starting to promote that myself. And would challenge any of you that are in that place where you're thinking about a small business that might be an opportunity for you. So I don't see any new comments coming on, and I'm gonna close it down now. I really appreciate you folks coming, and I really hope that you'll make a couple of comments here before we wind it up or just after we wind it up. And I look forward to seeing you again. Hope to see you again. We're here every Saturday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and love having you and look forward to it again. Thanks so much.